Hello there. Welcome into a draft day edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or if you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. That app, which is free to download and free to use, brought to you by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and well-being for all. It is a draft day edition of the show. The first round of the NFL draft is tonight, if you have not heard. But I will stay true to my promise of a veritable cornucopia of sports topics, but we'll mix in quite a bit of NFL draft discussion as the Broncos are waiting at 20. Will they be picking there? Some potential movement as it pertains to the Broncos. And we'll talk about that coming up. 719-247-1313 is the number, whether you want to call or text into the show today to give your thoughts on the NFL draft, but also the Colorado Avalanche. And that's where I would like to start, obviously. This Av Stars series is reminding me of something that is not forgotten just from last year. This series is giving me Lakers Nuggets vibes from last year. And there's one big reason why. The Avalanche have led for all of but 90 seconds of this series, and yet they find themselves down 2-1. If you recall, that's how the Lakers-Nuggets series went last year. Lakers led, and they led, and they led, and then all of a sudden something happened, and they lost. That's what this series reminds me of. And the thing that kept happening to the Lakers was Jamal Murray. And last night, I think if there is somebody that fills the role of Jamal Murray in this story, you have to kind of look at Jake Ottinger. With his track record, there was always going to be a game in this series where Jake Ottingered the Avs. Right? He's done it in nearly every series he's been in. There's been one game where you just can't seem to solve Jake Ottinger. And I think last night might have been that game. The Avs having opportunities to put that game away, to ultimately win that game even when it got even, and just could not do it. And I think you do have to start by giving a lot of credit to Jake Ottinger. Now, there are some things that the Avalanche need to fix themselves, namely the power play. And you think of having a 4-minute power play, unable to do anything with it. That would have won them the game. Conversely, you have the Avs killing off a penalty and immediately taking another one, which really hurt them. So special teams, I guess, in general, we could talk about, but certainly the power play of the Colorado Avalanche must be better. But what do they say about penalty kills? Your best penalty killer is your goalie. And I think Jake Ottinger really showed out last night and helped the Dallas Stars take a 2-1 lead. But this is where Game 2 comes into play. Coming out of Game 2, the overall sentiment, the overriding sentiment, I think, from Avs fans is mission accomplished. Right? They went down to Dallas, didn't have home ice, came back to Colorado with home ice. They split. That's all you can ask of them, right? Not so fast. Because Game 2 was there for the Avalanche to take. They were in control of that game. They were the much better team in that game. And they couldn't do the things necessary to ultimately get a win. So, yes, going into this series, if I were to tell you that the Avs would split the first 2 games in Dallas, you would have taken that. But the thing about expectations is that they can change based on how things go. And the way things went in games 1 and the first 2 periods of game 2 dictated that the Avs should be up 2-0. And they weren't able to finish the job in game 2. It made last night a massive game, a pivotal game. And the Avalanche, for a variety of reasons, lose it. And now you're looking back at game 2 and saying, man, if only they would have had that one. So we're talking about the loss in game 3, and we'll be talking mostly today about what caused them to lose game 3. But the ghost of game 2 and the image of that puck just sitting there for Cody Blackwell to put into the net came back to haunt the Colorado Avalanche, because instead of being up 2-1, they're trailing 2-1, and history will tell you that 66% of the time, the team that wins game 3 of a 1-1 series goes on to win the series. And just like that, the feeling around the Avs' chances have changed dramatically. Still going to be a long series, of course. And I think there's a great chance that the Avs may boat race Dallas in game 4. But Dallas now has done their job to reclaim home ice advantage, and they have history on their side. But the Colorado Avalanche, they've done some things to themselves to put themselves in this 2-1 deficit. And again, the power play is what you look at. Not just because they had one late in regulation, bleeding into overtime, where they could have won it, but all night, 0 of 6. That can't happen. And that's one of the things I said going into last night's game that had to be better. I thought the 3 things that the Avs had going for them, the 3 things that helped the Avs get a game in Dallas, be the better team for the majority of game 2, Nathan MacKinnon, the 4th line, and Mackenzie Blackwood. And that covered up some of the warts that the Avs had through 2 games. The second line, the defense overall, I guess the defense in front of Mackenzie Blackwood is how I would put it, and the power play. Now, you get Valeri Nichushkin scoring a goal, which is great to see because they're not going to win this series without him. So the second line gets going a little bit. They do something. I don't know how much better the defense was in game 2, and the power play was worse than it had been the previous 2 games. Here's Jared Bednar on the power play, and it's not a clip, just to warn you if you're an Avs fan, that's going to engender a lot of confidence.
Whether that's personnel.
Let's try that again.
You got to go to the drawing board. Yeah. And whether that's personnel changes on it. So we ran 2 units last night like that because of the 4-minute power play. You get a look at 2 units, and neither one of them was great. The top unit sticks with it and gets the 2 grade A's at the end of the game with a chance to win it, right? And we missed the top corner, and the next one hits a leg in front with an empty net, right? So they finally kind of start breaking it down right at the very end. We get the 2 looks, but it'd be nice to be more dangerous than that through the first 3.5 minutes of that power play and capitalize.
And if you've watched Avs hockey, you know that there is a recipe for failure when it comes to the power play. When the Avs power play is not working, what it looks like is what it looked like last night. But it's a lot of shots that they're trying to get through traffic from the circles and above, right? Which isn't a terrible idea. But they just kept with that over and over again. Right? Taking the shots, trying to, get it around the stars and past Jake Ottinger, like trying to, there's some of the shots where they were like trying to curve the bullet, like in the movie Wanted. Like, it's difficult to get a shot through traffic like that. Now, the Avs are skilled enough with Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon especially that sometimes that works. But a more tried and true method is to get bodies to the net. And that's what Jared Bednar was talking about at the beginning, or about the middle of that clip. What did it look like when they were dangerous on the power play? They had bodies right in front of Jake Ottinger. But when the Avs power play isn't working, it looks like they're settling for a lot of shots from the outside, hoping it gets a deflection. But you look at some of those shots, and it's all green and white. So essentially, some of those shots, they're hoping it deflects off of a Stars player past Jake Ottinger. You can't leave it up to that. You got to put your own guy in front. But when it's a lot of perimeter play, it's a lot of shots from between the circles to the blue line, and you're trying to weave it through 3 or 4 guys because Dallas does a good job of packing it in on the penalty kill. They don't give you a lot of space to shoot through. You got to find a way through it. You got to put bodies in front of the goal. And it was part of the premise where I said you got to flip Lehkonen and Jonathan Drouin, which Jared Bednar did 5-on-5. Because then you have a second line of Nelson, Nichushkin, and Lehkonen that are all players that are unafraid to get to the net and have the ability to do so and want to do it. Well, now, to me, Jared Bednar says back to the drawing board. If there's a fix, they got to put some of those guys more in, and I'm thinking more Valerian Nichushkin more than anybody else. They got to get more of those guys on the top power play unit. When it's MacKinnon and it's who can drive, but he will take shots as well from the outside. But you have him, and you have Natchez, and you have Duran, and you have Cale Makar. It's too many shot takers. You need some guys to get in front of the net. And I just didn't think that the Avs had enough of that on the power play. They started to get it late, and then good defensive plays by Dallas or good goaltending by Jake Ottinger ultimately foiled them. But it does get pretty simple moving forward, doesn't it? They can't go 0 of 6 in any game on the power play moving forward. It cannot happen. And the power play gives them many chances in game 3 to win, and they add their chances in game 2, and they've squandered both. And now history is not on their side. Much more from game 3 coming up. Take your thoughts in the meantime. 719-247-1313. We will talk about Gabriel Landeskog's return, which was spoiled, but it was still a momentous evening. And just as Matt Duchene put it earlier in the day yesterday, just bigger than hockey, what we saw last night. And I would love to be sitting here and saying Gabriel Landeskog's return, talking about that, and oh, by the way, the Avs won the game, but that's not the case. 719-24-7-1313, just getting going on this Thursday edition of the show. Coming up next, we've talked a lot about the Broncos moving up in tonight's first round. What if I were to tell you that if they're going to move, it's going to be the other direction? Some reporting on that next here on Extra Sports 1300. Avs fall in game 3 again in overtime. These games are starting late enough without them going into overtime on top of it. Although, to be fair here, for Dallas fans, it's even worse than it is here by an hour. But Avs fall in overtime again and are now down 2-1 in the series. Your thoughts at 719-247-1313. This text comes in from the 719. A cold power play and or goaltender will absolutely sink your playoff chances. You know, it's funny. People talk about, because we try to indoctrinate people. If you're a hockey fan, you try to indoctrinate people. Just admit it. Talk about how great the sport is because it's amazing. And one of the things that you probably hear as much as I do is, well, I don't really understand it. I can't really grasp the sport. And I get it, like offside, sometimes you have to explain it and some of the other nuanced calls. But at its heart, hockey, pretty simple game. If you get multiple chances and you have one more player on the ice than your opponent, you should find a way to score at least a couple of times. Right? I think that's a premise that most people can grasp. When this team goes on the power play, that means they have more players. Now, the percentages are not high. No team is like 75% on the power play, but you have 6 chances. 6. Including essentially a 4-minute stretch. Not essentially, it was a 4-minute stretch that you don't find a way to score a goal. That's one of the things that's easiest to grasp when it comes to hockey. You got to convert on the power play. Not every time, not even half of the time. But you get 6 chances. Got to find one. If they Avs find one, they win that game. Couldn't do it. That, more than anything else, we can talk about the struggles of the second line, working Gabriel Landeskog back into it and all that kind of stuff. If the Avs go 0 for 5, 0 for 6 on the power play again, they're not winning against a team like Dallas. There's still enough there with the Stars. I know they don't have Eskinen. I know they don't have Jason Robertson. But Mikko Rantanen came alive in Game 3. And you know his history in the playoffs. He's not going to stay down forever. And he made a couple of the biggest plays of the game. Still have Jamie Benn. Still have Rope Hintz. Can't go 0 for 6 on the power play. But Jared Bednar says, perhaps back to the drawing board in advance of Saturday's Game 4, which is now an absolute must-win for the Colorado Avalanche. Continue to take your thoughts on that at 719-247-1313. Let's shift over to one of tonight's main events, and that's the NFL draft. Of course, Nuggets and Clippers Game 3 tonight as well. I think when we talk about team, it's not really fun to talk about moving back in a draft, right? So most of our conversation, the conversation between you and I leading up to the draft, has been, what if the Broncos trade up a couple of days ago? What if they trade up to get Travis Hunter? That's exciting. That's fun. But there are merits to trading back as well. And if you can create a bit of a bidding war, then that makes the idea of moving back a little bit more appealing. Enter a tweet from Adam Schefter this morning that the Denver Broncos are entertaining offers for the 20th pick. The why of it all is pretty easy to sniff out. I've set Shedeur Sanders' floor much higher than this. But the prevailing wisdom is, given the way Mike Tomlin talked about Shedeur Sanders the other day, Shedeur's not getting past 21. So if there's a team, say Cleveland, New York, insert your favorite team here, that is in need for a quarterback but doesn't have the number one pick, you trade up to 20, you jump in front of Pittsburgh. And so if Shedeur Sanders does fall tonight, all of a sudden the 20th pick becomes much more valuable. And the Broncos can even leverage offers to Pittsburgh, right? And they can call Omar Khan and say, hey, we got 2-3 teams that are looking to jump you, and they're going to draft Sanders. What are you going to give us? It's the same premise that I used for what could be a stumbling block for the Broncos moving all the way up to get Travis Hunter. Right? We can work out the framework of a deal that would be at least feasible to move from 20 to 2. But who's to say Andrew Berry, in fact, he'd be derelict in his duty if he didn't do this, to take the Broncos offer and go somewhere else. So let's say to, I don't know, pulling a random team out of a hat and in no way reflects reporting done on this radio station earlier today, Jacksonville. And Andrew Berry can go to the Jags and say, hey, we know that you were interested in Travis Hunter. Now we got another team that wants to move up that's behind you. You don't have to say it's the Broncos. But we got another team that's willing to move up, and we're listening. What do you got? And now the Jags can say, well, we'll give you about the same haul, and now you're only falling back a few picks. So there's always that, and the Broncos can use this. If Shedeur Sanders falls, they can use this against Pittsburgh. So maybe the teams that are calling the Denver Broncos are, let's say, Cleveland and New York. And George Payton and Sean Payton are like, we kind of want to stay in the first round. Now you go to Pittsburgh and say, hey, we got some offers from teams coming out of the second round. What are you willing to give us? Now the Broncos get extra draft capital and only move back one spot. And if Shedeur Sanders is going to be the pick at now 20, and the Broncos are right at, that doesn't hurt them at all. And they still get their guy and they get extra draft capital. It becomes more enticing by the second, doesn't it? Certainly more enticing than if I told you that the Broncos are moving down to like 36. Because now, depending on when they make the trade, your whole night could be shot. You could sink in multiple hours into this NFL draft just for the Denver Broncos to not have a pick tonight. But all of this is with the idea that Shedeur Sanders is going to fall. And here we sit at 3:30 with the draft coming up at 6. I still don't think that Shedeur Sanders is falling that far. And I see some of the reporting today, all of a sudden, that smear job that whatever unnamed assistant coach tried to put on Shedeur Sanders to clearly get him to fall. That's why you don't put your name on it, because you're actually trying to take the guy. So that smear campaign didn't work. And now all of a sudden, Shedeur's back in play, not just higher than 21, but now back into the top 5 based on certain reporters. So I doubt that the opportunity will be there for the Denver Broncos to orchestrate this kind of a deal, but that's not, I mean, the same rules would hold for a Jalen Milroe or a Jackson Dart. I'm just saying it's funny that today, all of a sudden, now Shador is going back up draft boards. Almost as if a lot of this stuff was nonsense. But we'll see. GMs could change their minds 8 different ways between now and 6 o'clock. But if the Broncos could use that quarterback tax that we always talk about in their favor, because and Sean Payton talked about it in the pre-draft press conference, it was one of the first things he said, how glad he was that they're not in a position where they have to draft a quarterback. Now you can take advantage of other teams that are trying to do that, trying to get their quarterback. And I think, too, if the Broncos are, let's say, thinking Travion Henderson, I think just going into it tonight without seeing any of the draft picks yet, 20 feels a little rich for Travion Henderson. Now, the Broncos just last year did something similar, and they had a guy that they were targeting, and they said, we're going to get him. We don't care what pick it is. And it was Bo Nix. So they might be emboldened by that and say, we don't care. Yeah, maybe Travion Henderson isn't the 20th best player on our board, but we don't want to leave it to chance that we're not going to be able to move back up and get him, or he's going to be available at 51. So I could see the Broncos just sticking at 20 or moving back a couple of spots. Moving back a couple of spots, I think, would make a Travion Henderson draft pick a little bit more palatable if you're one that looks at where people are mocked or where the value is, right? If the Broncos all of a sudden move back, let's say to like 29, I don't even know who's at 29, but let's say they move back. Now Travion Henderson goes at 29. I think that would sit a little bit better. Plus, the Broncos would have more draft capital. So I see the merits here. I see the merits of potentially trading back, but to me, it has to be quarterback related. It doesn't make any sense that the Broncos would have multiple offers to move up at this stage for a position that's not quarterback. So we'll see. We'll see if Shador goes early, and then maybe what happens with the Saints, and see if that option is in play. It's a long time until the Broncos are on the board, or on the clock, I should say. So that was the reporting from Adam Schefter this morning. And then just got a tweet texted to me courtesy of Diana Rossini that tells a very different story when it comes to the Denver Broncos' desires, when it comes to movement in the first round of tonight's NFL draft. We'll get to that and your thoughts on the Avs Game 3 loss to the Stars. Drive Time Sports continues next. So Adam Schefter reporting that the Broncos may be looking to move back tonight. And then just within the last half an hour, Diana Rossini, who again, when she reports something on the Denver Broncos, I do think you need to pay attention. Because I think that there's a relationship there where Sean Payton does talk to Diana Rossini. So whenever she says something, I feel like she's got a pretty good source within the Broncos organization. She is reporting, and I want to get the wording of this tweet right because I think a lot of people may be breezing through it and not fully understanding it, because I think there's something in here that would get Broncos fans very excited, but I don't think it's so she says the phone lines are getting busier of first round nears per sources. The Broncos and Texans are attempting to move up in the draft order, comma, while the Giants are trying to acquire a second first round pick at the back end of the round. I think if you read that quickly, you see Broncos trying to move up and Giants back end of the first round. And you're like, oh, Broncos might be trying to trade up to 3. 2 separate pieces of intel. And the Giants trying to get a second first round pick would imply that they're staying at 3. But the Giants could be trade partners with the Broncos if they want to move back. Now, as far as the Broncos moving up, I think what I mentioned the other day when it comes to the difficulty of pulling off a trade to get Travis Hunter at 2 is that there are other teams that could probably offer a better package than the Broncos could to move up to that spot. Insert Ian Rappaport this morning on the Rich Eisen show saying that the Jags are trying to move up. And that would be for Travis Hunter. So when the Broncos are trying to move up, sure, could they still be trying a last-ditch effort to go way up? It's possible. But I think this is more in line with what I talked about yesterday of the domino effect if somebody goes early that we're not expecting to. And now a player, I threw out yesterday, Mason Graham, Tyler Warren, if one of those guys who are, I think, top 5 to 9 prospects, because George Payton said 10 through 20 is about the same. So if it's inside the top 10 in terms of prospects, and I think both Warren and Graham are, and they're kind of forced down because of a run on offensive linemen or somebody going early that we didn't expect, or, something like the Jags moving up and getting Travis Hunter. And I looked at that 11 spot where the 49ers are and said that might be a spot because the 49ers are a team that's entering a brave new world here pretty soon and paying Brock Purdy. They need to start hitting on draft picks and have multiple bites at the apple. So them moving up could still be to go way up. But again, I don't see that the Broncos will be trying to move heaven and earth to draft Ashton Genty. Not that they don't like him, but the price tag, if he's really set in the top 5 or 6, I don't think that the Broncos are going to pay that price for him. Or Travis Hunter, sure. But it could also be just moving up closer to the top 10 to perhaps catch a high-level prospect that's falling through some surprises in the draft. And you think about it with Travis Hunter, if the Jags can pull this off, and then the Browns would go back, they'd only be sitting at 5, still in front of the Raiders, and I have not ruled out the Raiders as a landing spot for Shedeur still. Browns can move back, get more draft capital from a team in Jacksonville that you don't know. I mean, it's a winnable division, but if you just stacked AFC teams top to bottom, I don't know that Jacksonville would be technically one of the 6 or 7 best teams in the AFC. So their pick would be better than, let's say, the Denver Broncos. And now Cleveland move back, get more draft capital, and then take Shedeur. And not mess with this getting back into the first round and the lottery ticket that is Jalen Milroe or anything like that. But if Hunter goes 2 to the Jags, then Carter 3 to the Giants, Campbell 4, Shedeur 5. That probably puts Genty there to the Raiders at 6. And then you have a run on offensive linemen. I mean, it could be, you can even see the Bears moving up to grab, let's say, Genty. Maybe the Raiders move back. They're able to get an offensive lineman. Jets go offensive line. And now that sets up the scenario I was talking about yesterday, where all of a sudden you're looking at a Mason Graham, who's a top 5 prospect in this draft, that all of a sudden is within reach for the Denver Broncos. And one other player that I don't think is a top 10 going in the top 10, but would certainly be gone before the Denver Broncos. I don't think Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland will simply fall to the Broncos. If that's where they're looking, I don't think that they're going to fall. I think Tyler Warren is top 10 or just outside top 12. And I think the floor for Colston Loveland would be Indy. So if the Broncos like Colston Loveland, it would be a wise decision to try and move up ahead of Indianapolis. So between the reporting by Adam Schefter and the reporting by Diana Rossini, filled in with my opinions, you have learned, when it comes to what the Broncos are going to do tonight, absolutely nothing. They could move up, they could move back, or they could stay at 20. But other than that, we've honed in on it. We know exactly what the Denver Broncos are going to do tonight. Take your thoughts on that. 719-247-1313. Couple of Avs texts here before we break for the top of the hour. From the 719, I agree with you, Ryan. Beautiful words. What more could you ask for going into overtime than a 4-minute major? That should have been a done deal, but like you're saying, if you don't get guys in front of the net, it makes it hard. Looking great watching them pass the puck back and forth, but it takes up a lot of precious time. I think in that situation, especially being a game you have to win or feel like you almost have to win, but you got to get guys in front of the net and you got to put the puck on net, win it with a rebound or bounce off a deflection. That ties into a little bit of what Tom is texting in and saying, I feel like the Avs want to set up the perfect pass for the perfect goal. A lot of times playoff hockey is about getting shots on net. Just shoot the puck. What the Avs' problem is sometimes, they do get cute. As teams with a plethora of talent like the Avs have tend to do. It happens. I thought that the Avs' plan was to put the puck on net. The problem was they're trying to do it from a great distance where it would have to travel through 3 or 4 stars players And it would have to beat Jake Ottinger, which proved to be a big problem. Early in the third period, I wrote this down. ESPN put up a stat. I think the Avs were out chancing, not out shooting, although I think they were out shooting at that time. But chancing is the important thing, right? How many scoring chances do you have? Early in the third period, the Avs were out chancing Dallas 18-9. They were doubling them up on scoring chances early in the third period. So that was before the 4-minute double major, before Brock Nelson's nose got split open. So I do, but it just goes to show my point. I do want to give Jake Ottinger a lot of credit for the way he played last night, because I think he was better than he was in games 1 and 2. But that just highlights my point that if Jake Ottinger is on his game, you're doubling up Dallas in chances. And most of the way you've been trying to generate those chances is taking a shot between the circles and the blue line and hoping that it travels through multiple bodies and gets past Jake Ottinger. It wasn't working. And that's where both the sentiment from Tom and the other texter come in. You got to get into the dirty areas. And we talked about it going into the series. This is not a new phenomenon. And that's why I say you need more of the, and you can take your pick. I think Valeri Nichushkin is the obvious one, but Brock Nelson, Arturi Lehkonen also have this in their game. Heck, put 2 of the 3 of them on the top power play unit. Perhaps Gabriel Landeskog, with his style of play, could be an option on the top power play. But you need more guys. You put Natchez and you put Drouin and you put McKinnon and Makar, and that is a significant chunk of your power play unit. And only one of those guys really has it in his game on a regular basis to crash the net. Natchez is his speed, but if he can't use his speed to get to the net, he's normally staying outside. Jonathan Drouin is one of those players that you look at through 3 games and say he's got to raise his level. The reason why I said they got to flip-flop Arturi Lehkonen and Jonathan Drouin is more because Jonathan Drouin wasn't working, not because Arturi Lehkonen wasn't. But you put those guys on your top power play unit, where's the room for multiple guys that will get into those dirty areas, who will try to redirect shots? Maybe Brock Nelson isn't the top name that you would choose out of that group, but that's his style of play. You did see him getting to the net more in game 3 than he had the previous 2 games. They need more of those guys with the Makars and the McKinnons. But whether you agree with the premise and how they were taking their shots or not, to start, as the game wore on, it became abundantly clear that it wasn't working, so you got to change it up. Like, at the very least, we can all agree on that, yeah? Maybe you say with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, it's not a bad shot to try and shoot through traffic. They have the ability to do so. But time and time again, it was being stopped or it was curving wide of the goal. Avs had quite a few opportunities that went wide of the goal. Got to change it up. And I don't think that the Avs really ever did, especially on that power play. Coming up next on this show, don't want to let how the game turned out ruin the moment at the beginning of the game that Gabriel Landeskog did, after 1,000 some odd days of being off the ice, was finally in there for an NHL game, and certainly a moment that Avs fans and hockey fans across the country won't soon forget. You'll hear from the captain as well next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Thursday. It feels like a Friday, though, doesn't it? Oh, I know why. Because I still haven't gotten used to the fact that the NFL draft starts on Thursday. Usually it starts on Friday. That must be it. Or I'm just ready for the weekend, either way. Ready for the Avs to play again. When do they play? Not tomorrow. Dang it. I don't know. To solve the power play, they may need to have an extra day here. That is the primary topic of conversation, of course, is where it went wrong for the Avs last night, as they now are back down, or they're down, I guess. They weren't back. They won game one. Anyway, you get it. Down 2-1 in the series now to Dallas. Of course, the NFL draft as well. Lots more noise surrounding the Denver Broncos. And man, they haven't been one of the most talked about teams in terms of who they're drafting for obvious reasons. But man, if there is a team that has been more rumored to be moving around in this draft, I haven't been able to find them. Moving up, moving back, top 3, top 10, out of the first round, been all over the place. We'll talk more about that coming up. But would have been nice if Gabriel Landeskog's return led to an Avs victory. It did not. But still an amazing moment. We didn't know what was coming after that. The moment, and it played out exactly as I thought it might, with Gabriel Landeskog starting the game, standing right next to his former teammate, Mikko Rantanen. And when Gabriel Landeskog went over and hit Mikko Rantanen, nature immediately healed. Not because it was Mikko Rantanen that he hit, but just Gabriel Landeskog delivering a hit made nature automatically heal. It was everything I think that we thought it would be in terms of the reception at Ball Arena. The emotion clearly was having to be fought by Gabriel Landeskog. There was a moment they came back from the TV break, and I watched the game on ESPN. I don't know what it was like on altitude, but on ESPN, they came back and then they showed Gabriel Landeskog's reaction to the video they put up and everything like that. Man, that didn't make you get a little misty. I don't know what will, but it just a really cool moment for Gabriel Landeskog. And the significance of that moment and the reception that he got was certainly not lost on Gabriel Landeskog.
I mean, it was amazing. I don't know. I'm just blessed and very fortunate to be in a position to feel those feelings and to feel. I don't know really what exactly was going through my body and mind at that time, but it was pretty special. And I mean, that's a memory for life. Simple as that.
And I think for everybody involved, whether you're watching it live and in person, whether you're watching on television, that's the return of Gabriel Landeskog, and the graphic that ESPN put up it blew my mind. And just put into context what Gabriel Landeskog did last night. Well, what he's done over the past 3 years to make it to last night. The other two hockey players that they put up on the graphic with Gabriel Landeskog in terms of the amount of days separating the last game they played for a team and the next one. There were 3 guys, and I got to admit, as much as I think highly of my hockey knowledge, I had no clue who those other 2 gentlemen were. Never heard of them. Now, I have a bit of an excuse because they played very, very long ago, which coincides with why they missed as many days as Gabriel Landeskog did. They were at war. World War II. That's why those two other gentlemen that were on the graphic with Gabriel Landeskog missed 1,000+ days. They were fighting for our country in war. And then sandwiched between them is Gabriel Landeskog. Now, obviously, very different circumstances here, but it underscores how improbable Gabriel Landeskog's return is, and just the sheer stick-to-itiveness that this guy has to show. He missed 1,000+ days. And I know the documentary is highlighting it very well, but just how many times in a quiet moment do you think Gabriel Landeskog, and I don't think he'll ever say it, but how many times had he had to have been like, you know what, F this. Like, I don't need it. I'm a millionaire, still a young man. I got family. I don't need this aggravation. I don't need this tease of I'm close to returning, and then I have this setback, and I got to, was that Sisyphus that pushed the rock up the hill? He's got to push the rock up the hill again, only for it to roll back down. I mean, find you a player. All the 99% of the guys in the NHL love hockey. You have to love hockey. You can't play a sport like that if you don't love it at some level. There aren't many guys that have proven they love that sport more than Gabriel Landeskog. So last night is the accomplishment. Whatever happens from here on out with him, whether it's in this series, these playoffs, next year, the year after that, however much longer he wants to continue to play hockey, all that is gravy. All that's an added bonus. The story is last night. And working his way back from this injury. Now, since he's a part of the series now, we got to talk about how he fits into everything. First, here's Gabriel Landeskog on how he felt playing in that game.
Yeah, I think those two games up in Loveland were really important for me, and they were great prep-wise. And then, getting to watch the first two games of the series down in Dallas. And like I said, it's playoffs, so it's not a whole lot of time to think about what's going on, how it's feeling, how long you've been gone for. It's just kind of like get into it and get playing. So, yeah, honestly, felt pretty good.
And I thought Gabriel Landeskog brought the one thing that you could reasonably expect him to bring night one. And that was the physicality. Highlighted, of course, by that hit on Mikko Rantanen. That's the one thing that you can expect Gabriel Landeskog to bring immediately. That you can see, right? The leadership, the intangibles, you can't see those things. Yes, he brought those back. And he brought the juice with him a little bit. Although I got to give Dallas credit. I thought they came out and were the better team early, even with all the emotion. But he brought the things that you can't see, but as far as the tangible things you can, the physicality he brought immediately. And I thought overall, I wasn't expecting the guy to score a goal or to have a Nathan McKinnon or Cale Makar-esque sequence where he weaves through 5 players and beats Jake Ottinger. At the height of his powers, he's certainly capable of some of those things. But I thought overall he looked good. Right? If I just had to boil it down to a word, it'd be he looked good. Good. is the one word I would use, which it begs the question, what changed in 48 hours that he couldn't have played in game 2? Right? An extra game with his line mates, playing with him, some of that physicality, which the Avs can certainly use in this series because Dallas brought it last night. Why couldn't he have played game 2? What was so different last night? And that's what I still can't figure it out. Why last night and not game 2, other than this shift of scenery? And is that what we're worried about here? Making sure that he made his return on home ice? Now, I thought the return was game 3 because he needed a little bit extra time, but the guy's out there warming up before game 2. And I talked about the power play and how the Avs could have used more guys that are willing, to get into the dirty areas. Well, now, since it's Gabriel Landeskog's first game, you're going to limit his ice time, obviously. That's the responsible thing to do. But you look at the underlying metrics, that third line defensively was really good. And they produced some shots. Third line, everyone focuses on the second line, and for good reason. You need your second line to produce. I thought the third line with Gabriel Landeskog was much better than it had been the previous 2 games with either Ross Colton or Miles Wood. So if he was on a minutes restriction, would that minutes restriction have been there had he played in game 2? You could do the minutes restriction in the lower stakes game. Again, the lower stakes of game 2. And you can allow him more ice time, perhaps, on the power play. I think that these are valid questions to ask, and I wouldn't be asking them if I didn't see Gabriel Landeskog going through warmups 40, now almost 72 hours ago. That's what was so puzzling, and I get he wanted to get in the rhythm. Why not just play him? You get the emotional boost from the guys. Yeah, the crowd isn't behind you, but even the Dallas Stars fans would have to appreciate what they were witnessing. I mean, do you think he'd be booed? Hey, if Gabriel Landeskog got booed in Dallas, that would be even more fuel to the fire. That would have added the same fuel to the fire that ovation got last night. That would get the Avalanche all sorts of energized. You're booing our captain? So given that he was at least good enough to go out and take warmups, kind of look back just like you look at the Avs squandering game 2 in many ways and it coming back to haunt them, and you're looking for, what could have tilted the scales the other way. I'm not saying game 2, but last night, a little bit more Gabriel Landeskog, the way he played. I think it couldn't have hurt. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Gabriel Landeskog didn't hurt the Avalanche at all. Far from it. I thought he helped. I wanted to see more Gabriel Landeskog last night. But you got to be responsible. He had not played in a game in 1,030 some odd days. But you could have done the ramp up in game 2, had him ready to roll game 3. Take your thoughts on game 3 last night, 719-247-1313, whether it's Gabriel Landeskog, whether it's what cost the Colorado Avalanche, or just the big question right now, how you feeling? Because if I would have taken the temperature of Colorado sports fans in general. And I heard it yesterday. Confidence, optimism, high with the Colorado Avalanche, not so much the Denver Nuggets. Now, just 24 hours later, could we be the complete opposite? Could the Nuggets go into LA tonight and win, and they would be up 2-1, and now the Avs are the ones that people are worried about? Can shift that quickly, can it? 719-24-7-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. I'm watching NFL Network here in the studio. They're showing Bucky Brooks' mock draft on the screen, and he has the Broncos taking Travion Henderson with the 20th pick. Of course, the running back out of Ohio State. I think in large part because he has both Genty and Amarion Hampton gone before the Broncos pick. Genty, I think he had Jacksonville, perhaps. And then Hampton going to the Cowboys. Now, that's the other thing to watch tonight with Ashton Genty. If Genty does indeed go in the top 5, now it starts to pull all the other running backs up, right? Because I remember the start of this process, Genty was immediately mocked to Dallas at 12. And now the Broncos at 20 would almost assuredly have their choice of every other running back on the board. But now if Genty, if we are to believe the latest mock drafts, and Genty's going in the top 5, now that there's a running back needy team in the Dallas Cowboys who may grab the second best running back on the board, which would obviously impact the Denver Broncos. Field Yates of ESPN has the Broncos taking Matthew Golden. Interesting. We've heard receiver, but Golden out of Texas, a little bit different. He is certainly a different type of receiver than Cortland Sutton is, right? More of a speedster. And I think Marvin Mims' role on this team moving forward is pretty cemented. I don't know that Marvin Mims anymore is going to be this field stretcher with his speed. I think it's going to be more, I think that's still part of his game, but I think they're going to use him a lot near the line of scrimmage. And then you can have Golden, as Al Davis will tell you can never have enough speed, but now you have Golden to stretch the defense a little bit. And Mel Kiper has the Broncos taking Amarion Hampton. Charlie Campbell, who's been on this program before, has historically been one of the more accurate mock drafters. He has the Broncos taking Amarion Hampton. I think where I'm at here, and there are certainly some potential wild scenarios when it comes to trades. If the Broncos stay, because I kind of feel like with this NFL draft, and I've heard people indicate both of these different directions, but I think it will either be the most straightforward, easy draft that any of us have ever watched, because it would be like, oh, that guy, yep. And last year was shaping up to be that way, and then Michael Penix happened, and then all hell broke loose. So this draft has a chance to kind of be that way. And I'm talking about the first round. Tomorrow and beyond, who knows what happens. But as far as tonight goes, it can either just be no Michael Penixes in here, and it's just, yep, that guy, yep, kind of thought he would go there, and it's going to be the most chalky draft that in recent memory. Or if you listen and read between the lines of, say, Bears general manager Ryan Pace, this thing could get weird fast. And the reporting this morning by Ian Rappaport would indicate the latter. If Jacksonville were to facilitate a deal to go up to 2 to take Travis Hunter, and now the Browns may feel a little bit better about drafting Shador because they're taking him a little bit later and they were able to get more draft capital back, because the Jags are going to have to pay through the nose. Any team's going to have to pay through the nose to get Travis Hunter. But that could make things get nutty very quickly, and they could stay that way because the impact of who all of a sudden starts to fall and who teams might go up to get. And if Shedeur ends up going in the top 5, now could we see Jackson Dart go to the Saints and 3 quarterbacks in the top 10? And then we're looking at a 4th quarterback, because I do think that there will be a team that will try to trade back into the first round to take Jalen Milroe. You get the extra year, and for a bit of a project like him, that would be smart to have the extra year. But Jalen Milroe is the one guy in this quarterback class that has one trait that is truly special. His deep ball is really good, but his speed is a trait that, as much as I like Shedeur, he doesn't have any of those one physical traits that are elite. I just think Shedeur is just a really good quarterback. Just a really good quarterback. I don't think that he can go to a place with no talent around him and be able to lift them up. But if you have some pieces in place, I think you can win games immediately with Shedeur Sanders. But Jalen Milroe, with his speed, it's like, if we can, with the speed and the deep ball, if we can hone it, the rest of his skills, and get an extra year to do it, now we're talking about 4 quarterbacks in the first round, after we were told throughout this draft process that there were only 2, and lately it's only 1. It's only Cam Ward. So either this draft is going to be super predictable and maybe a little boring, or it's going to be absolutely nuts, and I don't think there's any room for in between. Oh, we get one move, but it's not. No, it's either going to be chaos or it's going to be pretty straightforward. I lean towards the former, but I'm sure hoping for the latter. Now, if the Broncos stay where they are, or even if they move back slightly, right? Somebody wants to come up and get a quarterback ahead of Pittsburgh. Broncos facilitate that. Now they're drafting, mid to late 20s. I think where I've landed, and I made this mistake last year. I said at the very beginning of the draft process that the player that I think Sean Payton will fall in love with is Bo Nix. And then and I was saying it, and then it got closer to the draft, and I remember this time last year, there was a lot of Brock Bowers noise. Right? And then the Broncos end up going Bo Nix. I will course correct. I said at the beginning of this draft process, Emeka Egbuka is going to be a player that Sean Payton would love. And I think where I'm at, as far as predictions for tonight, I have 2. I think their first 2 picks are going to be running back and a pass catcher. Maybe flip-flop them depending on how the board falls. Could be pass catcher with their first pick, running back tomorrow. Or could be running back tonight, pass catcher tomorrow. But I think that's where the Broncos are going with the first 2 picks and Bo Nix. And where do we start this whole process talking about? You got to get weapons for Bo Nix. Now, this was before Evan Ingram. So I think there's some sentiment that has softened a little bit in that regard. And like, okay, maybe it's not a must that the Broncos get all these weapons for Bo Nix. But these draft things tend to circle back around, and it's like filling out the March Madness bracket. Like, the best thing you can do is just go with your gut, and that's what we have at the beginning of the draft process, right? We have a gut feel, and the gut feel was Broncos need to get weapons for Bo Nix, and my gut feel was that Emeka Egbuka would check a lot of boxes for Sean Payton. And we've heard a lot of stuff. Broncos have done some things in free agency. It's changed perception. Mock drafts have changed 80 different ways. I'm going to stick. I'm going to go back to where I was at the beginning. The mistake I made last year is I deviated from that. I'm not going to this year, and it will probably be an overcorrection, and the Broncos will go defensive line or some stuff like that. But I'm going to say Broncos get a running back and a pass catcher with their first 2 picks. And I think at least one of those is an Ohio State Buckeye. They're not the hottest takes, and I'm not sitting here telling you that they are. But that's what I'm most comfortable with in terms of a prediction. I do think Bo Nix will end up with a couple weapons early, and one of them will have played their college football at Ohio State. And I don't rule out the possibility that it's Emeka Ibuka and Travion Henderson, which I think would be a tremendous first 2 picks if the Broncos end up with Henderson and Ibuka. But you could throw Colston Loveland into the mix, Omarion Hampton into the mix, Ted McMillan, Matthew Golden. But I do think our first instinct was right. I think Sean Payton sees Bo Nix, and he has his own opinions about what constitutes a good weapon for his system. But I think Sean Payton does know that getting Bo Nix players that can help him out on offense would be the best way to go early. And then let George Payton do his thing later on and start stacking up the depth on the defensive side of the football between all of these veteran free agents they brought in over the last 3 years. Take your draft night predictions for the Denver Broncos or just in general. Where's Ashton Genty going? Will the Browns trade out of the second pick? 719-24-7. 1313. An interesting premise has been posed on the text line. Could the return of Gabriel Landeskog actually worked against the Colorado Avalanche last night? We'll talk about it next. We will get into the Nuggets game 3 tonight against the Los Angeles Clippers of Inglewood. First playoff game at that dome they got going on with the wall of fans. If you haven't watched a game for the Clippers yet this season, it is it takes you a minute. You're like, what's going on over there? It's called the wall. But we'll get into tonight as the Nuggets try to avoid the same fate as the Colorado Avalanche, falling down 2-1. In the meantime, taking your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Dutch is called in and wants to talk NFL draft. Dutch, fire away.
With the 32nd pick. Well, hold on. I need my jingles. Do you have the sounder?
Oh, yeah. You want me to? Yep. Hang on. Here we go.
With the 32nd pick, my beloved Philadelphia Eagles and that tiny, beautiful bastard Howie Roseman select Malachi Starks, safety from Georgia. My nephew.
That's your nephew.
Yes, I'm his uncle.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be good. Then you should be able to get some tickets, yeah?
Yes, exactly. But I don't live out in Philadelphia anymore, Ryan.
Well, you could travel. The games are once a week. You can't travel on the weekend?
Well, he's pretty busy. I mean, he probably is going to give his because his dad is John Starks. I don't know if people know this. I'm actually related. I'm brothers with John Starks of the New York Nets.
Of the Knicks?
Did I say Nets?
You did say Knicks. It's okay.
Whatever.
Yep.
Same thing.
All good. All right. I saw a mock draft.
Turn to pick?
Well, you just did. We kind of scrapped the mock draft. The participation wasn't there. People were leaving. It was but I appreciate you calling in. I saw a mock draft.
I anchor the thing. That's the reason why you have me.
That's right. The Eagles were picking too far down. I saw a mock draft today, and I have a coworker who's a big Eagles fan. In fact, he's wearing his Saquon Kelly Green Super Bowl jersey from this year just to clearly to attack me and make it a hostile work environment. But
you do know that Josiah is my brother, right?
He's your brother too. Yes. So we got John Starks. We got it's quite the family tree that you have developing.
I know. I have nephews, but I'm actually not doing a bit. Josiah is my brother. But
yes, he was wearing it, and I felt personally attacked by it. But we were sitting together, and I saw a mock draft that had the linebacker from Alabama going to the Eagles, Jihad Campbell. And I got physically ill because as well as anybody what the Eagles need is another front seven game wrecker. Like, what is that? Like 12 front seven game wreckers are going to get Jihad Campbell too?
Pull it off. I don't know how we pull it off every year, but it seems like nobody's really paying attention that we're hitting on every pick every year, and I don't know why people aren't trying to stop it.
Well, so, Nick Wright has an interesting theory on that. Have you heard his theory?
I don't pay attention to anything.
And you're probably right to do it, but, it's the world I live in, so I can't avoid it. He thought he had a theory after last year's draft because everyone was fawning over the Eagles because they ended up with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, as history would prove. Pretty good picks, but his whole premise was that Howie Roseman plays the mock drafts. He drafts who the Eagles are mocked to take, so then he is showered with praise. And a more ridiculous take I cannot find, because guess what? Now, Quinyon Mitchell was not maybe as impactful as the Eagles hope, but Cooper DeJean was every bit that and more. So I don't know. I'm of the mind of how does he keep getting away from it?
Quinyon Mitchell was a shutdown guy. If it wasn't for Sertan going, hey, like he did this year, I guarantee he would have gotten Defensive Player of the Year.
Okay,
He
but
shut down an entire
we
side of a
agree.
half.
But we agree that Howie Roseman, how does he keep getting away with this? Like the Aaron Paul Breaking Bad gif, how does he keep getting away with this? That's Howie Roseman. He just every year he does it, and he's going to do something tonight, as you know. And I'm going to get on the air tomorrow afternoon, and I'm going to say maybe they didn't win the first round, but one of the picks I love the most is Eagles because they got player X. I know it's inevitable every year.
Of course it is. Fly, Eagles, fly. I'll take a look.
All right. See you, Dutch. Appreciate it. It's Dutch calling in, making the pick for his Eagles. Does it all the time. Like clockwork. Every year, these are the two teams that you can book will be showered with praise tomorrow. The teams that have multiple first-round picks, right? Because it's free stuff. And what's better than some free stuff? More free stuff. So if you have two picks in the night where everyone is getting free stuff, you win. You have to really screw up to have people criticizing you for getting multiple first-round picks. So the team that makes multiple first-round picks, whether it be Cleveland or New York, they will be showered with praise tomorrow, and Howie Roseman. Every single year. Every year. How does he keep getting away with it? From the 7-9 in terms of the Denver Broncos, any Ohio State player will help Denver. It would be awesome to land two of them, talking about Travion Henderson, the running back, and Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver. And I'm not an OSU fan at all. I still think they go running back with pick 20. Wide receiver room needs help, but not nearly as bad as the backfield. And I do think that's going to dictate what order these go. Right? Because I really do think, and it's a matter of taste. If the Broncos land a Marion Hampton, you're going to be happy as a Broncos fan, right? But does a Marion Hampton get taken earlier? The scenario I spun earlier, Genty goes in the top 5. Cowboys are in kind of the same position as the Broncos, right? They could go either wide receiver or they could go running back. So if they go running back, and now all of a sudden 2 are off the board, and the Broncos are getting a feeling that maybe they're not able to move up as high in the second round as they'd like to, then they go Travion Henderson, and then they let the draft board kind of fall with the hopes of getting a pass catcher tomorrow. So I think how this goes, because here's the other thing. Like if Ted McMillan ends up going, let's say, to like Green Bay, let's say there are 2 wide receivers off the board before the Broncos pick and 1 running back. I could see the Broncos going wide receiver. And if it's the other way around and only Ted McMillan has been picked and there are 2 running backs off the board, then maybe the Broncos feel the urgency to go ahead and grab Travion Henderson and then look for a pass catcher tomorrow. But that's kind of where I'm at. If there's there's still I'm leaving open a slim possibility that something kind of nutty happens early on in the draft, which forces a player down. And I'll continue to say Mason Graham and Tyler Warren to speak it into existence on behalf of you, the Bronco fan. I'm doing you a favor by speaking it into existence, or maybe I'm jinxing it. I'll let you decide. But to force one of those players down a little bit, And then the Broncos go, well, Tyler Warren would be a pass catcher, but like a Mason Graham would be a better example of, look, maybe we weren't thinking defensive line at 20, but now Mason Graham, who's the best interior defensive lineman in this draft, suddenly falls because of the quarterback neediness and the love affair with Ashton Genty and some other thing, the run on offensive linemen, then I could see the Broncos maybe deviating from that. But if they stay and this draft goes pretty chalky, I think Bo Nix will have 2 new BFFs by pick 52 tomorrow. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. This coming, I did want to get to your premise, Brett, which I do think it's going to come across, I think, as a little bit trolling because most people will view Gabriel Landeskog's return as just this amazing thing. And how could it be bad for the Avalanche? I actually think you may be onto something. I don't totally agree with you, but I think you're onto something. Brett says Gabe's return to the Avalanche was more of a distraction than it was a boost. I mentioned earlier that I thought Dallas came out better than the Avs did last night. They generated opportunities earlier on in the game. I just thought they looked better the first few minutes. The Gabriel Landeskog return could be a factor into that. Could the Avs have been so hyped up that maybe they were a little bit out of sorts when the game started? I will allow that to be a possibility. But as that game wears on, no, I don't think that Gabriel Landeskog returning was a negative for the Colorado Avalanche. If anything, again, I think that he should have played in game 2 if he was healthy enough to go through warmups, and then you could ramp him up in that game and have him more of a factor last night. Early in the game, that could be that there is just a lot going on, and maybe the Avs didn't come out of the gate the way that you would have liked them to. But trust me, as that game wore on, the Avalanche had plenty of opportunities, and I can't pin it on the return of Gabriel Landeskog that they didn't convert. 719-247-1313. Alex says there are plenty of running backs in this draft that you can snag in the second or third round. I don't think Denver needs to go running back first round. And that's where I have been. Because there's a difference between what I think will happen and what I would suggest the Denver Broncos to do. I'm with you, Alex. I am because we always try to weave some draft day references from the movie into, I am running back in the second round no matter what guy. Right? Use the depth at that position. But where I think it's the Broncos loving Travion Henderson so much. Or Amarion Hampton. I'm with you. I'm good if it's Judkins. If I'm a Broncos fan, I'm good if it's Judkins. I'm good if it's Caleb Johnson. But my gut feeling tells me that the Broncos really like Travion Henderson. And remember last year, they really like Bo Nix. And regardless of what the draft board said, or we said about where the Broncos should be looking quarterback, they took him with their first pick. There were other circumstances in there. Obviously, they didn't have a second round pick, so it's a little bit different, but it's the same idea of the Broncos, I think, feel in some ways emboldened by their move last year to just say, forget where we're picking. When we get there and we got a guy that we really love, we're going to take him, regardless of position. But I'm with you, Alex. I look and see if you can move up and grab somebody that's maybe fallen. I think that, Ted McMillan being within reach of the Denver Broncos is an interesting possibility, although he and Cortland Sutton are somewhat similar, I think, in what they bring to the table. But I'm with you. I go running back tomorrow, and I see what else is out there, whether it's defensive line, whether it's a wide receiver or tight end. But I kind of feel like the Broncos really love these two running backs and may feel compelled to take them tonight. More of your draft thoughts, more of my draft thoughts as we proceed. One more hour left to play. We'll get into the Nuggets and Clippers game 3, but in the more immediate future, more on the Avs loss in game 3, but the return of Gabriel Landeskog. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this draft day. Of course, there are other sports topics that are just as pertinent, and we'll get into those during What's Driving the Show momentarily. First, I want to share my appreciation with you. My appreciation that you are tuning into the show, whether you're listening to it on air, online, or through the app, or whether you're watching on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. Let's hit it with the three stories that are driving the show. Not waste any time. What's driving the show? Sponsored by Jason Fields Real Estate, your home field's advantage for winning in the Colorado Springs real estate market. Visit jasonfieldsrealestate.com. Let's all take a deep breath and listen to story number one together.
McKinnon for Jonathan Drouin, and he's outworked by Mikko Rantanen. Marchment picks it up, tries to go in on Taves, throws it aside, Marchment out in front, and they score. Tyler Seguin wins it in overtime, and the Stars take a 2-1 series lead.
Altitude Sports Radio on the call, as heard on Extra Sports 1300. Avs fall in Game 3, and this series is starting to look a lot like a series in last year's NBA playoffs that the local team benefited from. It's feeling like the Lakers-Nuggets series. The Lakers, remember, led like every minute of every game except the last minute. And they kept putting that graphic up. They're doing the same thing with the Avs and the Stars. The Avs are leading for all of about, except for 90 seconds in this series, yet they are trailing 2-1. And playing the role of Jamal Murray, at least last night, was Jake Ottinger. I thought there would be a game during this series in which Jake Ottinger would, as we like to say on this show, dating back years, Ottingered. There was going to be a game where Jake Ottinger would do his thing and would frustrate the Colorado Avalanche and keep them off the scoreboard. And I think from a Dallas perspective, that's the biggest story. He stepped up his game from the previous two and was a big reason why Dallas had a chance to win that game last night. Now, on the Avs side of the equation, some of it has to do with Jake Ottinger. A lot of it doesn't. The power play. 0 of 6 cannot be the case. 1 of 6 probably gets it done. Right? Certainly if they take advantage of the Marchment penalty, they win the game. But you look at any one of their power plays, given the way the rest of the game played out, probably gets it done. Now, 1 out of 6 is not great, but it shows how low of a bar that the Avs special teams needed to clear last night to win the game, and they couldn't do it. And it seems or looks very familiar, because if you watch the Avalanche for long enough, you will know that when the power play is not working, you watch the power play, and it's a lot of shots from wide areas, a lot of shots close to the blue line, above the circles. And there was a lot of that last night. And I think they're number one, the Avs have got to get more bodies in front of the net. Hockey, at its core, is a very simple game. If I am a goalie and I have a large human being standing in front of me that does not want to let me see the puck, that's hard for me to be able to make a save. But if that guy, that large human being, is not in my way, and I have a bunch of guys in front of me that would happily get out of my way so I could see it because they're my teammates, I can make saves. The Avalanche did not do a good job. I get it. With Cale Makar, with Nathan McKinnon, with Marty Necas, some of these guys, they're going to take shots from greater distances than right in front of the goal. And they have the ability to snipe a couple. I would argue getting bodies in front of the net is good regardless. But certainly when the first couple of power plays, 3 power plays go by, and it's a lot of passing and a lot of shooting from distance, not a lot of bodies out in front, you got to switch it up. And I thought that you did see on the later power plays that the Avs started to do that. But then that's where Jake Ottinger comes in, or Esa Lindell, as it were, with him blocking Arturi Lekkonen's point-blank shot. The Avs took too long to figure out what they needed to do on the power play. And I would say in Game 4, just start with putting bodies in front of Jake Ottinger. I think that the power play units need to be mixed up a little bit. I think there needs to be more of the net drivers like Brock Nelson, like Valeri Nichushkin, like Arturi Lekkonen mixed in with the McKinnons and the Makars. If you throw in Jonathan Drouin and you put Marty Necas in there, all of a sudden you don't have a lot of guys that are known for going to the net. So I think that's where Jared Bednar needs to start when he goes back to the drawing board, as he said this morning, he needs to when it comes to figuring out the power play. But 0 for 6 can't happen. Goaltending, special teams wins this time of year. The Avs certainly have had the goaltending to win. Mackenzie Blackwood last night was really good again. Need the special teams. Not 6 for 6, not even 3 for 6. 2 for 6 would be outstanding. 0 for 6 can't happen. You're not going to win this time of year if you go 0 of 6. Perhaps this guy would be a good choice to play a more prominent role in the power play. Here's story number 2.
I mean, it was amazing. I don't know. I'm just blessed and very fortunate to be in a position to feel those feelings and to feel, I don't know really what exactly was going through my body and mind at that time, but it was pretty special. And I mean, that's a memory for life. Simple as that.
We finally saw it last night. Gabriel Landeskog making his return to the ice after over 1,000 days. And the graphic that ESPN put up, I think, puts it into context even more and makes you appreciate even more what Gabriel Landeskog did in order to make it back. The other 2 guys that they showed with Landeskog that have gone 1,000 or more days between 2 games for their team were fighting in World War II. Not comparing, just using it to point out that it has taken an insane amount of dedication and love for his craft for Gabriel Landeskog to stick with it over those 1,000 days. And the reception that he got was warranted. It played out like I thought it would, with Gabriel Landeskog standing next to Mikko Rantanen for the opening faceoff, and it is going to be easily one of the top 5 moments in the history of the Avs franchise moving forward. In fact, once we got into the game, I thought Gabriel Landeskog played pretty well. Delivers the early hit on Mikko Rantanen. I don't know that you saw a guy that had missed 1,000 days. And that brings more into question what I asked after game 2. If he was good enough to go through warmups, why not just play him in game 2? He had to be limited on his minutes last night. It was his first game back in over 1,000 days. Could have used him a little bit last night, I think, especially on the power play. He's not afraid to get in front of Jake Ottinger. And one day, maybe I will get my explanation on why, if the guy is healthy enough to take part in warmups, that you just don't play him. But he could have helped. I'm not saying that decision ultimately cost the Avs last night. I'm just saying Gabriel Landeskog could have helped. Maybe he doesn't tip the scales. But everything I saw in the ice time that Gabriel Landeskog had said, yeah, he could have helped. More of this, please. And we'll see how much more ice time he sees in now a must-win Game 4 for the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday. Now, away from hockey to football for story number 3.
We can't be afraid of talking about our goals and where we see this team, and especially coming out of free agency, and I probably, more than any other average to below average handicap golfer, am guilty of hitting a driver when I should be hitting another club.
Sean Payton, always metaphorically speaking. That was last week. Tonight, the NFL draft begins, and we don't know where the Broncos are going. Report from Adam Schefter this morning that the Broncos are looking to leverage the fact that they sit one spot in front of Pittsburgh to try and move back for a team that is quarterback needy and wants to get in front of Pittsburgh. And then later in the day, and right now the reports are still coming in from various insiders that the Broncos are still trying to move up. Now, if the Broncos do move back, I would say move back and stay in the first round. Right? Moving to day 2 would be, I mean, I get the reasons for it, but I feel like, George Payton talked about how the quality of players between 10 and 20 were about the same. I would like to, if I'm the Broncos, to stay within reach if one of those guys between 10 and 20 slips a little bit. But I understand, look, if there is a quarterback needy team and Shedeur Sanders falls, you could get quite the haul for a team coming up to jump in front of Pittsburgh. So I think that makes a lot of sense. As far as the Broncos moving up, the Cleveland Browns also being reported, haven't decided yet, still taking calls on the number 2 pick. There's the dream right there, right? The Broncos move up to 2, take Travis Hunter, which would please Travis Hunter because he said a long time ago he wished he could just stay in Colorado and play for the Broncos. That would be if we're setting the dream scenario for the Broncos, that's it. They move up to 2, they get Travis Hunter, and that would last them throughout the weekend. They don't need to do anything else. And I think it would be a win if the Broncos landed Travis Hunter. I think more reasonably, because there are other teams calling the Browns, ones that probably will offer a sweeter package than the Broncos will. I'm thinking it's more trying to get closer to the top 10 in case Shedeur does go in the top 10, if Ashton Genty goes in the top 5, if there's a run on offensive linemen, which is not an area of need for the Denver Broncos, and it forces down a Mason Graham or a Tyler Warren to potentially go and grab that kind of a player. Or perhaps it's just moving up. Don't forget Colston Loveland, right? If they like Colston Loveland, you got to get in front of Indy to grab him. So I think Broncos fans would like to see the Broncos move up, get aggressive. We always love when our teams get aggressive. But we really haven't gotten any closer to knowing where the Denver Broncos will go. But my prediction for the Broncos, my gut feel, is that we've worked our way all the way back around. And I said early in this draft process, Emeka Egbuka of Ohio State was going to be a receiver that Sean Payton would like very much. And I do believe that running back is a need for the Denver Broncos, whether it be tonight or tomorrow. I think Bo Nix is going to have a couple of weapons, barring an unforeseen trade. If the Broncos stick where they are, I think they're going to end up with a pass catcher and a running back in their first two selections. And they both could be former Ohio State Buckeyes. 719-24-7-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Notably absent from the three stories that are driving the show. Not anything against this story. I only have three spots. Coming up next, Nuggets Clippers. I think a must-win for the Denver Nuggets. How did they get it? Next. Tonight on Extra Sports 1300, Game 3 between the Nuggets and the Clippers as that series shifts to Inglewood for the first playoff game in the Intuit Dome. I just want to warn you about the wall. Like, you think that, oh, what's the big deal? You're going to see it and you're going to be like, what is that? Now, if you're a soccer fan, you're very familiar with such things. But it's a different look. And you'll see it especially when the Nuggets go to the free throw line. How much of an impact does it play? I don't know. The numbers will tell you that free throw shooting against the Clippers in LA was a little bit more difficult than it was other places. Take for that what you will. And it is a little bit, even though the wall stuff, I'm like, okay. But if there's anything to that wall, it would be of note when it comes to the Denver Nuggets, because David Adelman, one of the things he pointed out after game 2 was they got to make their free throws. So if there is something going on in LA where teams aren't able to hit free throws at their normal rate, that's mildly concerning coming out of game 2 for the Denver Nuggets. But I think tonight's game that I really feel like the Nuggets need to win if they're going to win this series. They can't do this back and forth. They win one, we win one. They're going to run out of time. They got to take back control of this series, and they can do that with a win tonight. Now, how they do it, pretty simple. Like, it's simple to identify what they need to do. A little bit harder to actually do it. But one, you got to get Nikola Jokic back to being Nikola Jokic, right? Still good game, but by the standards we hold him to, not his finest performance. And I don't know if he got some of what Jamal Murray had and he was feeling under the weather. I do think Zubats is working him on both ends of the floor. He did look a little tired towards the end of that game, but they need him more than anything else, because he's the one guy going into the series that was the constant, right? We were trying to figure out, okay, what does Jamal Murray need to give you? What does Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, the bench, all this kind of stuff? We always just, and it's literally taking him for granted, which we shouldn't do. But Nikola Jokic doing whatever he wants is kind of the given. And in a game where at times he struggled, that can happen. And he's had, if it is something defensively that the Clippers are doing, I have full confidence in Nikola Jokic that he will figure it out. But the other part, the turnovers. This series, that has been the story. Clippers had 20 turnovers in game 1. Nuggets had 11. Nuggets +9 in the turnover margin. They won the game. Game 2, same numbers, flipped to the other teams. Nuggets turned it over 20 times. Clippers turned it over 11. Clippers won the game. When this series, and you could say this about the Avs and the Stars as well, when the two teams in the series are so evenly matched, and you really, you need a scalpel to separate them. Something like turnover margin is massive. With the Avs, it's special teams. That was the story last night. For the Nuggets in game 2, it was turnovers. And it was, for the Nuggets in game 1, it was the fact that they were able to turn over the Clippers as much as they did. And Jamal Murray, after game 2, said exactly that in terms of what the Nuggets need to do in order to win game 3.
We just got to take care of the ball, especially when we get a stop. Can't give it right back. but we definitely had a chance to win the game. So now our mind's switched. We got to go to LA with an attack mindset and get one of these games.
Man, he sounded bad after that game, didn't he? See if he's feeling healthier after a couple of days between games. But it's not just the amount of turnovers, to Jamal Murray's point. It's the timing of those turnovers. We have seen both teams have these prolonged stretches where they go on big scoring runs. Right? It was the Clippers early, mostly James Harden in game 1. Nuggets jumped out in game 2. What ultimately got the Nuggets back in game 1? They created a couple of turnovers, turned a 14, 15-point lead for the Clippers down to single digits. And I think it was like 4 at halftime. It's the same thing with the Clippers. I thought the Nuggets jumped all over them in game 2, and then some turnovers led to the Clippers coming back. And look, especially in a series like this, there are going to be ebbs and flows. It's going to be back and forth. But if the Nuggets are building some momentum in the game, they got to sustain it. And to Jamal Murray's point, there were too many times in game 2 where you felt like, okay, here's where the Nuggets go, and then a turnover, and the Clippers are back in front. And that kept the Nuggets, after they jumped out to the lead, turnovers got Clippers back in it, and then turnovers kept the Clippers kind of away from the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets weren't really ever able to take back control of that basketball game. So, Nikola Jokic being back to the height of his powers, turnovers, first two things I'm looking for. And then you go beyond that. What are they going to try differently against Kawhi Leonard? I would argue that there isn't a defender, perhaps in the history of the NBA, that could have stopped Kawhi Leonard the other night. But it's still incumbent upon David Adelman and the Denver Nuggets to make some adjustments to see if they can maybe slow down Kawhi Leonard. And I think the thing that sticks out to me that I keep going back to, more minutes with Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon on the floor. Because if Peyton Watson's not on the floor, it's like if the Nuggets need somebody to get stopped, that Aaron Gordon, go to that guy. You know, this is what Peyton Watson is supposed to be. He's supposed to be a defensive stopper more than anything else. I don't know if he's up to the task of guarding Kawhi Leonard, but if I'm David Adelman, I give him a shot. I give him a shot early on in this game. Maybe don't start Peyton Watson, but the first bench rotation, bring him in. Get another defender on the floor and just see. I don't think it's the most important thing. I think the turnovers would be certainly above that. But this is a game where it's on the Denver Nuggets now to make adjustments. How are they going to adjust? Adjust to take better care of the basketball. Adjust to guarding Kawhi Leonard. Basketball is a game of adjustments. And when you lose the previous game in a series, you're the one that's looked at to make those adjustments and to get a better result this time around. And then last thing I'll say about tonight's game, Michael Porter fell on, hurt his shoulder. David Adelman yesterday was optimistic about him. I expect him to play, but what does he look like? They need his floor spacing. They need his three-point shooting ability. Might be tough with a bum wing. But it starts with Nikola Jokic being Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets taking care of the basketball. They do those two things, they're going to have a chance to win tonight and take back the lead in this series. If they don't, doesn't even go beyond to how they stop Kawhi and all this. How's Michael Porter? If they don't have Jokic at the height of his powers, and if they're turned the ball over 20 times, they're not going to win tonight. And I think they need to win tonight if they're going to win this series. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, one last thought about the Denver Broncos and the draft tonight. Obviously, running back is one of the positions that we expect the Broncos to address at some point during this draft, whether it be tonight or moving forward. But what if the answer to the Broncos running back question is not available in this draft? Some rumors about that coming up next. Colorado Springs Switchbacks FC will be off this weekend. They played last night. We'll just leave it at that. They were participating in a soccer match last night. We won't bother with the result or how we got there. But they got a little extra time to rest up because they'll have a quick turnaround next week. Week from Saturday, they will host Phoenix Rising at Widener Field. That will be Galactic Night if you are fans of wars or treks. And then just a couple of days later, a little bit of history at Widener Field as they will be hosting New York Red Bulls, the first MLS team to visit Widener Field in the round of 32 for the U.S. Open Cup. And I say both of them together because wouldn't that make for a fun few days? Switchbacksfc.com. Go ahead and get tickets to both games. But no Switchback soccer tomorrow. That match last night hurt me in a deep personal way. That was a tough one. But it's early. Season is long. A few more cliches that I just can't think of at this point. So, Broncos, decent chance they get a running back tonight. But what if I told you that the answer to their running back prayers is not available in this draft? What if I told you he is currently employed by another NFL team? Reports today that Jets running back Breece Hall may be available for trade, and because it is the year 2025, and we look at social media and we read into things, Breece Hall, out of nowhere, tweeted out, fingers crossed emoji. What could that possibly be? I'm sure he'll come back and say that was about something else, the result of Masked Singer or something like that. That's what these athletes do, right? They tweet something out without really thinking too much about it. And then when they're called out on it, or when the perception is they're saying it because this, they go, oh, no. It's because of this completely other thing that you had no idea about. Part of the reason why it's more imperative that the Broncos get a running back on the first 2 days, sometime in the first 2 days of the draft, is because there's really not an option for them on the free agent market. But if the idea behind why the Denver Broncos running back room needs to be changed up is because they don't have, and I'm not talking about bell cow, but they don't have that one guy that they can absolutely trust. Right? Jaleel McLaughlin's the closest thing they have to that, but we know from a physical standpoint, he is limited in what he can do. And he is a complimentary back. Audric Estime had some moments, but certainly not enough for you to feel like definitely he's the answer. And then now we're talking about these other guys that bounced up and down between the practice squad and the active roster, and that is not meaningfully addressing the running back position as Sean Payton promised that he would. So if I told you, because Breece Hall, you're not, this guy's coming up on the end of his rookie deal, right? If you're the Denver Broncos, you're not trading pick 20 for Breece Hall. Not with this running back crop. You can easily tell the Jets to take a hike. We'll take, Omarion Hampton, or we'll take Travion Henderson. But if the Jets are wanting to move to a more running back by committee, and maybe the upcoming payday for Breece Hall is not savory for them, and Breece Hall's on the move, you trade something else to get Breece Hall, and now You don't have to be in the running back sweepstakes in this draft if you don't want to. Now, I do think that one way or another, there will be at least two new Broncos running backs of significance. I'm not talking about, an undrafted free agent. I'm talking about one of the names that we have mentioned, whether it's early with Henderson or Amarion Hampton, or whether you're an Ashton Genty guy and you're still holding out hope that they're trying to trade up for Genty, or you look later in the draft for, Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, maybe a Cam Scattaboo, even later out of Arizona State. It's either going to be a couple of these names. I wouldn't be shocked if the Broncos get two running backs in this draft, or they should be interested in Breece Hall. Get Breece Hall for something. I don't know, 3rd round pick, 2/4, whatever it would take. They're not touching pick 20. You get Breece Hall, and then I think you can wait till later. Maybe it's a Devin Neal or Scattaboo or somebody like that you take late tomorrow or even into day 3 potentially. So and I'm not saying that I think you can make an argument that you'd rather have Breece Hall than Amarion Hampton or than Travion Henderson. But I'm not even presenting you with that choice. What I'm saying is getting Breece Hall, you don't need to look to Amarion Hampton or Travion Henderson tonight. You could go somewhere else. You could get McMillan. You could get Egbuka. You could try to catch one of these potential guys that fall. You could look defensive line. I think that if these Breece Hall rumors are true, the Broncos should be at the front of the line trying to get him. The offensive line is there for the Denver Broncos to be not just a good running team, but maybe one of the better ones in the NFL. But with their current stable of backs, they can't realize their potential, and they put a lot into Javonte Williams. They wanted Javonte Williams to work, and he just didn't. He just wasn't the same guy after the injury, and now he's in Dallas. And I think that's where a lot of this Ashton Genty stuff comes about. And I saw Mina Kimes of ESPN earlier today tweet out that the ideal spot for Ashton Genty, regardless of what pick it is that Genty lands with the Denver Broncos. And I think that's what she's speaking to, is that the offensive line that the Denver Broncos have. And think about, again, where they got these players from. Where'd they get Mike McGlinchey? From Kyle Shanahan's team. Where'd they get Ben Powers? From the Baltimore Ravens. Arguably their best offensive lineman is a guard, a road grading guard in Quinn Meinerz. That's what made the lack of a Broncos running game so confounding, was that they had the offensive line to do it. They just didn't have the backs. And Sean Payton has promised or said, I don't want to make it a promise, but he has said that he wants to meaningfully address the room. They have done Zippo to address the running back room. Now, the draft is long. By the end of this draft, I think they will have at least one running back. And the potential of landing Breece Hall makes it that they can just draft one. If they don't get Breece Hall, if the rumors are not true, or the Jets are not willing to deal him, or the Broncos don't have the right asking price and Breece Hall goes somewhere else, then I think you could see multiple backs taken by the Denver Broncos. The question obviously is, will it be tonight? And will they stay at 20? I feel like with all the noise, and this is only just a gut feeling, because no one knows with the draft. Nobody knows. I kind of feel like with all the talk about the Broncos trying to move up, trying to move back, kind of feel like they're just going to end up picking at 20. Because I think all these reports, Adam Schefter saying that they are entertaining offers for teams that want to jump in front of the Steelers to take a quarterback at 20. And then these other reports from Diana Rossini and others that they're trying to move up. That, to me, yes, shows that the Broncos are very active in talking to other teams, but maybe it's also a difference of opinion, not one that tears apart the war room, but just like, do we want to move up? Well, we could move back and get more picks. And then I just think that might lead to them sticking where they're at. And George Paton said going into this draft that the players between 10 and 20, they're about the same. So I think that the Broncos will be pleased if they stay at 20 with who they end up with. The better question for now is, will you be? Right? That's what the draft's about, you, not about the Denver Broncos. We'll figure out the impact of these rookies later. We just want to grade this. So that's coming up at the top of the hour. Infinity Sports Network will have coverage of the NFL draft, and then we will have the Nuggets and the Clippers later this evening as well. Hopefully it all works out perfectly like it did last year, although the Broncos were picking earlier, that you can hear the Broncos selection on these airwaves in time for the Nuggets game to start. This is also where moving up would help. But Infinity Sports Network takes over at the top of the hour with NFL draft coverage. Just one more quick check of the old timeline. No, we did have a trade earlier. I didn't bother to bring it to you because it's not of significance, but it could be a precursor to something that the Browns landed. I think moved up in the 5th round and gave Houston some extra draft capital. It's possible that the Browns are trying to load up to potentially move back into the 1st round, but the trade itself, not really worth noting. But it could mean that the Browns are loading up on draft capital to potentially move back in. I think it starts with them. I think we'll have to wait an excruciatingly long time for Cam Ward to walk out onto that stage, and that's what always drives me crazy about the draft, is I'm never really that interested in who's picking number 1, and we've all decided who they're taking, and we know who they're taking, but yet we have to go through this charade of the clock counting down and all Roger Goodell and all that kind of stuff. But once Cam Ward is off the board, then things heat up. How late are the Browns going to be taking calls for this 2nd pick? Jacksonville, Denver, trying to land a once-in-a-generation type player in Travis Hunter. And you know what's funny about this whole thing, going back to the beginning of the draft process? I recall the Titans general manager telling people that they would not pass up on a generational player. He said those words. And immediately after, and for every day since, it has been Cam Ward. There still, throughout this process, is only one sure generational pick and generational player, and it's Travis Hunter. Maybe you can make the case for Abdul Carter. You cannot make that case for Cam Ward. So I don't know how they're squaring this down in Nashville, but I remember, because I said, oh, that's Travis. And then it just immediately went to Cam Ward and has never moved off. What happened to generational? We're not going to pass on a generational player. Travis Hunter is literally that. But that's their problem, I suppose. And it makes it more interesting if the Browns are willing to move out of the pick that they could take Travis Hunter and make our night interesting. I think we're going to find out. Is it going to be chalky? Is it going to be chaos? I think that the Browns maybe hold the keys to that. If they move, then everything gets opened up. If they stay, then it's going to make me feel like we're in for a very predictable evening. But we love it nonetheless, don't we? NFL draft coming up at the top of the hour. Nuggets at 8 o'clock. Appreciate your patronage. Tough one last night for the Avs. They'll play again on Saturday. We'll get back into Avs tomorrow, but mostly Nuggets and NFL draft, and then getting you ready for rounds 2 and 3. Broncos job not done, regardless of what they do tonight. Enjoy the evening, no matter what you are watching. Hit me up on X at Gingerly Tweets if you want to chat before 3 o'clock. If not, talk to you tomorrow at 3.